One of the experiences that continues to mark us individually and as a church is the experience of transition. Transitions occur when we have a new job, a new relationship, a new baby, a new house, a new marriage, the death of a loved one, or the discovery of a serious illness. But transitions are also experienced at the levels of communities, including a church community. Our diocese is a community that has experienced circumstances that have triggered some real transitions. For example, the decline in the number of priests, the moving away of many of our young people, the response to the Indian residential schools, the decline in the number of people who attend church, the sex abuse scandals, the decline in financial and human resources to contribute to vibrant communities. These transitions, whether personal or communal, cause us to look at the values that are important to us and challenge us to face the difficult issues that arise as a result of these transitions. Today's celebration gathers us together to be filled with gratitude for the ways that God has been present with us and blessed us through the celebrations that have taken place in this church. But we also gather today filled with tremendous sadness that a place that has been important for spiritual growth will no longer be used as a place for gathering of the Lord's disciples. This is a day filled with heaviness for all of us, and we look to the Lord to touch our hearts and call us as His disciples, even in the midst of these circumstances. I'd like to share with you some of the things that struck me as I reflected on today's readings. These readings immerse us into the life of the early church. After some initial persecutions, the church enjoyed peace throughout Judea and Jerusalem, Galilee and Samaria, where the first evangelization had taken place. We are then told of two miracles performed by Peter, another sign that the power of Jesus through the Spirit was working in him. The healing and life-giving work of Jesus continues in our lives today. The healing of Aeneas, bedridden with a form of paralysis, takes place as Peter orders the man to get up, to rise, to resurrect to new life. As a result, we are told that all the inhabitants of Lydda and Sharon turned to the Lord. They accepted the new life that the Lord can bring. The second miracle takes place in the town of Joppa, where Tabitha, a much-loved woman who spent her life doing good for others, dies. The people ask Peter to come. As Jesus did with the daughter of Jairus, Peter tells all the people to withdraw from the room. He kneels down and prays and trusts in the power of the Lord. He tells Tabitha to stand up. Again, they are the words summoning to new life as he helped her to her feet. The reading reminds us of the new life that Jesus brings. We need to realize that Jesus' healing and life-giving work continues among us today. The only condition for us to experience it is our faith and trust in Jesus. It might be good for us to realize that each one of us can, in our own way, be a source of healing for others. This message is important as we are weighed down with the closing of our church. We need to trust that Jesus will also bring new life. To the extent that we provide a listening ear to those who are burdened by this closure, we can be a source of new life and support for others. As well, the gospel story has an important lesson for us. The disciples have been traveling with Jesus, have seen his power, and have drawn close to him. The teaching about the bread of life forced them to make a decision. Do they continue to listen to his teaching and follow him, or do they go their own way? Jesus challenges his disciples when they say, "This teaching is difficult. Who can accept it?" He asks them, "Do you also wish to go away?" Peter makes his profound act of trust and commitment and responds for the disciples, "Lord, to whom can we go? You have the words of eternal life." This same dilemma is given to each of us, for we have followed the Lord in this church, we have celebrated our joys and sorrows here, and we have trusted in the Lord's giving of new life. The closing of this church can also shake our trust in the Lord. Peter reminds us that our focus must be the personal relationship with Jesus. Where else can we go to develop this relationship except through the receiving of the bread of life? If we reflect more deeply on it, we know that Peter is right. There is really no viable alternative to the way of Jesus, even when things happen which are difficult to understand or accept. The way of Jesus is not the adherence to a physical building, but the nurturing of a relationship of trust that can bring us a whole new way of life. Yet the reality is that some disciples walked away from Jesus. We too have that decision to make. Let us ask for the faith and strength to stay with him and experience the life that only he can give. One thing that is essential as we face transitions in our lives is the need to be attentive to two extremes: either to ignore the past and move ahead unreflectively into the future, or to ignore the future and hold on to the past as if nothing will ever change. Certain skills are essential during these transitions. Through a ministry of reconciliation, we need to listen to and support people who have been hurt. We need to spend time with older Catholics who may have been hurt by the church, some staying with the church, and others deciding they no longer need it. We need to spend time with people who are in midlife, who may feel badly damaged psychologically by the events in the church and are not connected with the church any longer. We need to be ready to listen to all who are affected in any way. We need to appreciate how transitions affect us, both personally and professionally, for we realize that we often do not handle transitions well. True transition is a psychological and spiritual process that usually involves three different phases. First, there are painful endings that involve physical separation from relationships, places, and environments that have become important to people. Then people in transition often enter a neutral zone. In the neutral zone, one actually may take on a new job or a new role, but the feeling within the person in the neutral zone is often one of being lost and confused and not knowing exactly where one is going in life. Many people would like to jump over the neutral zone or anesthetize the pain of that zone. The only way to deal with the neutral zone is to go through it. What we do not realize is that often in the midst of the neutral zone, new beginnings begin to take place. Maybe in our experiences of transition, we can sense new beginnings for ourselves and others. We might even be a listening ear, a caring presence for people who feel they have been hurt by the church. As we close this church, we realize that the Lord is calling us more than ever to depend on that personal relationship that we have nurtured in this church. We are invited to trust in the call that the Lord gives us as we move to a new church, a call that will involve a transition period as we take time to adjust to our new situation. In this transition period, we may often experience the loss, the doubt, discomfort that involves anxiety and confusion. We may experience resistance as we refuse to embrace change. Gradually, we may experience the discovery of new options. At these times, we realize that Jesus is walking with us during the darkness and the turmoil. Through His Word, He gives us an experience of His grace, and our personal encounter with Him calms our hesitations and guides us along our way. At this Eucharist this morning, as we celebrate the liturgical closure of this church, we are reminded of those who built and supported this building since the early 1920s. We are reminded of the joys and sorrows, the nourishment and the healing, the peace and the challenges that we have experienced in this sacred space as a place where we have had the privilege of encountering our God and knowing the Lord's presence when we were in need. We remember the priests, the ministry of all the priests and pastoral leaders who provided the Lord's consolation and peace here in this place. And this morning we have Father Jim and Father Charlie who have served this community for many years. We also recognize the faith of those parishioners who continue to be an inspiration for all of us. While this place may close, our relationship with our God and with one another continues to develop as God calls us to new places where we can encounter God in new and deeper ways. May the sadness that we experience today be transformed by the God who walks with all of us, especially in those moments where we experience doubt, turmoil, and distress in our lives. In a special way, may the Blessed Virgin Mary, our patron saint, give us what we need as we are challenged in these days with the closure of this church. The invitation of today's liturgy is to face this transition filled with trust in God's grace. Just as Jesus faced transition in His life, especially as some of His followers walked away from Him, so the transition of the closure of this church can invite us to a new beginning that allows us to be formed by His Word. We become new persons who continue to have the memories and experiences of being part of this Immaculate Conception Church. But we are also invited into a new relationship with the faith community of St. Peter's Church so that we can continue to experience the Lord's call within our lives. May the Lord in this Eucharist fill us with grace, peace, consolation, and a new awareness of His presence with us in this experience of transition.